Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is the founder of Purpose Guides Institute. He guides people to find and embody their life's purpose, as well as trains those who want to become purpose guides themselves. He has been a psychotherapist, meditation teacher, and integral mentor for over 20 years. He is also the founder of Green, Sangha, and Integral Awakening Center. He has taught purpose discovery with Buddhist activist Joanna Macy, depth psychologist Bill Plotkin, and human potential pioneer George Leonard. Currently, he is adjunct faculty at JFK University in the Consciousness and Transformation program and teaches purpose discovery at San Quentin Prison. Welcome to the show, Jonathan Gustin.
Thanks. Thanks for that nice introduction.
Yeah, great to have you on the show. Did I pronounce your name right? I was kind of stressing out because it was coming out. I was like, I couldn't remember if I had it.
Gustin. Yep,
okay,
you got
perfect.
it. A+.
Good. Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I was reached out by, I think, some of your staff, and I got to look at the Purpose Guides Institute. You've been doing this for a long time. It's extremely important work. I wish that work like this were as common as like yoga or fitness studios or Burger Kings. You know what I mean? Like there's not a lot of people working on this, talking about this, creating curriculum. And so I'd love for you to speak a little bit about your background and how you got into what you're doing today. And as a bonus intro question, which I rarely do, what is the deal with the Consciousness and Transformation program in a university? That's some exciting stuff. I don't know if I was aware that was kind of creeping into the university systems.
Yeah. So there are these schools now. They're accredited schools. JFK University is one. A friend of mine started another school called Meridian University. And basically, they're bringing the soul and spirituality of human beings with academics and scholarship. And it's actually possible to marry the two. So it's not yet fully mainstream, but it's getting to be so more and more. And they're amazing. Every summer, I teach a master's level class on purpose discovery to a cohort of people who are going through this human and consciousness program. So it's really cool. You can do academics and deep spiritual work in the same place under an academic umbrella.
That's amazing. Yeah, that makes me super excited. I didn't know that. The course sounds awesome.
Yeah, and you can do these things online now, which is amazing. When I started, it was live, and now I'm doing these with Zoom, and there's a guy, and all over the place, which is really, really sweet. Zoom is an amazing thing, or video conferencing in general. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And so how did you get into this? You've been into this for a long time. Do you just want to give the listeners a little intro about who you are, your background? You were, a psychotherapist.
Yep.
Also, you've been doing marriage counseling. So you really know the human psychology, the human psyche. You've worked with a lot of people. So why don't you just fill us in a little bit about your background?
Sure. Make a very long story short, when I was 12 years old, I heard about this word enlightenment. Didn't know what it meant, but I knew whatever it was, I was interested in it. And it quickly came to me that it wasn't just about sort of waking up. It was also about showing up and being of service to the world. So flash forward decades and decades later, my little sort of short way of saying it is that to embody human wholeness is to wake up, grow up, and show up. To wake up to classical enlightenment, sometimes called unbounded or undivided awareness. It's the enlightenment sometimes associated with the Buddha and other sages from many different traditions. And so along the way, I became a meditation teacher to acquire the skill set to help people with that dimension. So you could imagine this is sort of the upper world dimension of spirituality. In the middle, you could say, is everyday personality and ego. And there, I think there's sort of a triple purpose right there, is to be an equanimous person in the face of difficulties, whether it's a small difficulty like, being in traffic or your computer's not working, or a bigger one like health concerns. To be able to give and receive love without any unnecessary impediment, is itself a very difficult thing. We want to be loved so deeply, and we want to love so deeply, and yet do we do it full bore, full blast, with 1 billion gigawatts that we're capable of? And, normally there's places where we hold back. And then the third part of that middle world, everyday personality and ego purpose, is joy. There is the possibility of an abundance of joy. I don't mean unending joy or joyful every second. I don't sell that kind of thing. But I do realize I am in my way, almost constantly in just being joyful, right? I'm not in a war zone. I'm not starving. I'm not presently in pain or dying of cancer. And many of the listeners would fall into that category. Yet, I'm kind of stressed out because I have a big launch happening next week, and then there's this, and then my kittens are banging on the door, and whatever it is. So that's the hallmark of what I would call a mature human being, and I call it an emotional adult. I'm not quite there yet. I'm on my way one day, but I've come a certain distance in that ability to give and receive love, to be able to hold a charge of joy, an abundance of joy, and not give away my peace, my equanimity too cheaply. So to recap, there's that middle world dimension of purpose, which is to be an emotional adult, right? To take that which is unconscious and make it conscious, to bring that which is in the shadow and bring it into the light. And you can more or less become an integrated, full functioning human being at the level of ego and body, which is great. But there are also these two dimensions of spirituality. The first, as I mentioned, is that transcendent dimension, classical enlightenment, non-duality, experiencing the oneness or unitive intimacy with everything. But there's a second, less talked about piece, and that's the one that I imagine you were interested in talking to me about. There's a lot more mindfulness out there than there's ever been, which is terrific. It's like, when I started, the boom hadn't happened yet. The yoga boom hadn't even happened yet. And then psychotherapy is becoming less and less stigmatized and more something that people will understand can be really helpful to, work on the personality warts of the ego. But this last dimension is the descent, the burrowing down into our depths, where we discover our soul's calling, our soul level purpose. And it is a spiritual awakening equal to the upper world one, the classical enlightenment one, but it answers a different question. The question in the upper world or classical enlightenment is, who am I? What am I at the level of essence? And when I sit, I'm a Zen meditator. When I sit Zen, that's essentially the question. But in purpose work, the question is, what do I do? What is my place? What is my calling? What is my destiny? Now, Zen doesn't specialize in that. So you could actually think that we have specialists, like there's general practitioners in the world in medicine, and then there's specialists. I'm the general practitioner in this work, right? So credential-wise, I have a licensed psychotherapist, meditation teacher, and purpose guide. But these three worlds, each of them has their own specialty, has their own question, right? So how can I be just happy is the middle world question, and psychotherapy attempts to help people metabolize more. The upper world question, Zen takes really good care of. But this lower world question, I call it purpose guiding or soul guiding. And really what it is that in human beings, to varying degrees, some people want the pure highest grade octane, as much meaning rocket fuel as they can have. And I'm one of those junkies. And then there are other people who can get by with less. It's not cult. And that's totally fine. But the people who are my people, the one who, they feel something when I talk, are the people who are like, I want more meaning, more depth, more purpose, and more impact in my life. There's a quote from Friedrich Buechner, a theologian, and he says, find that place where your deepest gladness, like your deepest joy, and the world's hunger meets. I love that. I would have, given my right arm to have written that line. Like, that's what I mean by purpose, is what lights you up, what do you love, but what is what are you designed for to help the world? Like, I love skiing. I used to race. I love jazz drums. I used to be a jazz drummer. But, frankly, if you ever heard me play jazz drums or watched me ski, you'd go, that guy's not going to be in the Olympics, and he's not going to be playing at the Blue Note. So I love it. I do lots of things I love, but they're for me. They bring me joy, and that's fantastic. It fills up the fun bucket, I call it. But then there's a special set of things that I love that overlap with that which the world needs, right? So my sister became a palliative care doctor. Beautiful. The world needs that, but she also loves that work. I don't think I'd love that work. The whole blood and guts and not so much me, right? And she wouldn't want to do my work either. So, what's that calling? Another poetry fragment just came to me. Mary Oliver. What do you want to do with your one wild, precious life? And most of us, or many of us, have a hard time answering that really specifically with high definition. This is who I am. These are my people. This is the transformational process that I bring them through. And so I help people or guide people to co-explore the whole terrain of soul, the whole terrain of the underworld journey of spirituality, so that they can learn, integrate, and embody their soul level purpose.
This sounds amazing, man. I'm sold.
Sign him up.
Yeah, it's such a deep introduction, and you're hitting on so many different points and bringing in so many different philosophies, but in a very grounded and practical way. It's very easy to understand the way that you're sharing it. So it shows your level of mastery when you can take really deep subjects that can sometimes be very complicated and simplify them through sentences and analogies or quotes that kind of bring it home. So my follow-up question has to be, how the heck do we do it? If people are listening, they're like, okay, yeah, I want to know my soul calling. I know my life purpose. It's actually one of the common questions that I get is like, how do I find my life purpose? And one thing that I've thought of, and I'm curious your perspective, is more of a direction. I find like, you might not know what the end result is. It's not like, I'm going to be a doctor at this hospital and get a 10, whatever the case is. It could be, but it's usually more, I find a very compelling, inspiring direction, right? And then the world kind of drops things in, and it creates that direction. So I'm going to stop yammering. I'm going to let you answer the question.
Yeah, no, great question. Well, I liked what you just said there, because there can be one of these maha giant awakenings where you more or less have the sort of the full picture. And that's wonderful when it happens. But what often happens is, if we're willing to listen to our depths that I call soul, the next step will be revealed. And then the question is, will you flow with that, or will you resist it? And so I can talk about the voices of resistance in a moment. But yeah, you hit on the gold star question, right? So how do I find my soul level purpose? So I would say there's two general baskets. If you go to like a self-help, section in a bookstore, most of the books will have what I would call a cosmology of ego or personhood or just selfhood. And that is to say that you're not stretched beyond the confines of the skin encapsulated ego, if you will. So the place one looks for the information, the answer to the question, is one's own mind, one's own past. And that's not a bad thing to do. It's not what I do, but it's a good start. It can be a good warm-up. So before I say how to do it, I'll say that behind my how and all my methods of soul encounter techniques is a cosmology. And I want to be like just open and honest about it. It's a cosmology of soul. It's my understanding and my experience that a modern or postmodern, human being in 2019 in the United States and beyond tends to live in like a little postage stamp swath, size of territory of the totality of their being. And we know that. I mean, Einstein famously said, and I don't know how he knew this, they said towards the end of his life, how much brain do you think you used? And he goes, I would say no more than 5%. Now, of course, he can't really know that, but let's say that we're even remotely true. What's the other 95% doing, right? So my work is predicated on the understanding, the experience that we are ego and soul, but we are mostly something else. They say in the universe, there's matter and then there's dark matter. And dark matter, and this is beyond my pay grade in physics, is like over 90% of the universe. Whoa, okay. And so there's a saying in Sufism that for a thing, this is far out and mystical, that for a thing to be here, it has to be mostly somewhere else. So let me give an analogy. If you have a space probe and it's flying past Saturn, it's whatever the size of a van, let's say. But without NASA space control, ground control, it's just a piece of metal, fancy, expensive piece of metal floating through space. Most of the probe is actually back on Earth at NASA, rooms filled with men and women on computers doing stuff. So it's like the little tip of the iceberg, or you could just make it, in the ocean, right? A probe goes into the ocean, but the main submarine or the main ship has all this stuff. So I would offer this understanding that this Earth suit, this rent-a-body that we're loaned to for a very short time, is the smallest part of us. It's very important. I mean, no disrespect to it. I'm in no hurry to drop it off. I love being alive. I'm not like the transcend and get out of here kind of guy. But the more I come to really understand the depths of a human being, myself and the people I work with, I see them as probes. I see them as extensions of something much bigger, much more vast. And one word you could use for that is soul, and then another is spirit. But just to open up soul a little, and then your question about how to connect with it and learn your purpose. So the first thing I want to say is that I can't really define soul. That's not going to stop me from trying. But there's like the word love. There's a few words, or God. There's a few words for which you almost don't really want to fill in the space. But because I use it, I feel some obligation to at least, attend to what I think it is. So let me first say that the soul is an organ of perception. It's a way of seeing. It's a way of feeling. It's a way of knowing something. I look into your eyes. I mean, granted, this is, Zoom, and I see something, right? I mean, I see you've got a beard and a hat and all that. But if I look really closely, there's a light. There's an aliveness in your eyes. And as I spend more time, I can just fall into it, and I begin to get a sense, a taste of your depths, past the personality even. Right? And the personality is wonderful. You seem extroverted and intelligent and fun and all sorts of things. So there's the personality package, right? And we either like or don't like the personality package of the person we're with. But then there's something even deeper than that. And that's soul. And it's soul that one goes to find out one's destiny and calling. That the depths. And we sometimes hear the still small voice within. And if the spirituality doesn't work for people who are listening, that's fine. Just call it your psyche, or total psyche, following Carl Jung, or your intuition, or your gut. I think all of these are part of the same thing. Another part of what I mean by soul is that it is the organ of imagination. Imagining is a way of perceiving the world. And it's the one that's atrophied to quite a large degree in postmodern and modern people, and it's a capacity that we can reanimate. And I don't mean pure just fantasy. Like I can imagine or fantasize winning the lottery and then doing some really good work and buying some cool things. But that's my ego thinking about, how I would spend $1 billion, which is a fine fantasy. But I'm talking about imagination that comes like a dream, like it comes from some depth and reveals itself. It's like a theophany, like an opening up to an unseen or untapped depth. So when I did this once, I was in a meditation retreat, a solo one in a little cabin in Northern Ontario. And it was actually more about the Zen and the upper world, but I had a flash and it was an image. And it wasn't something, I didn't think my way through this. And I saw the image of, it said, whole person midwifery, like a midwife, whole person midwifery. And I was like a 20, 21-year-old guy. And I knew instantly what it meant and what it didn't mean. I had no interest in catching babies, as amazing as that would, be. That wasn't, it was poetic, right? And what it meant and continues to mean is that my calling, my job, my service work is to help midwife the wholeness of a human being and human beings. And which is why I ended up, becoming a meditation teacher, a purpose guide, and a psychotherapist. So it is possible through soul encounter techniques and technologies to have you could call it a vision or an imaginal rendering, a blossoming of some identity that has the perfume of soul on it. It doesn't say on my business card, whole person midwife. No one would know what that means. It's completely idiosyncratic to me. Now, that isn't to say other people aren't sort of, midwives to wholeness, but in terms of being given that name, a friend of mine in this sort of mythopoetic, imaginal way, his name is Cocoon Weaver. He feels this calling to weave cocoons of transformation for his people. And he's a depth psychologist and a vision quest guide. Like, those are the vocational sort of expressions of it. Another part of understanding soul is that it's the word that indicates your place. Like in wild nature, everything has its niche or niche. I never know how to say it. And everything belongs in a particular place within a habitat. And humans seem to be the one, species that can sort of like live in a high rise anywhere sometimes and not really sort of ground, So it's not only the habitat, literally the earth space that you occupy, but also the place in the human and more than human realms that you are meant to do your offering. Like a bee offers pollination, right? And a frog offers its medicine, and trees, they're the lungs of the world. Like everything has its destiny and its calling, and it can't be anything other than it is, unless you're a human. If you're a human, you can refuse your calling. You can refuse your destiny. You can go so far as to say that humans have no destiny and have no calling. You are free to do that. But in nature, you never see a rose saying, I'd rather be a sunflower. I mean, I get they have no cerebral cortex, but let's just pretend they did. I don't know. Would they do that? I hope not. I love my cats, but I don't want to be a cat. And I don't know if they'd want to be me either. So there's this question of place. What is my place that is indigenous to me? When I do my purpose work, I generally feel so alive and well suited. I feel seated in life, like I was meant to do this. Whereas if I did my sister's job of being a hospice doctor, I think something would feel off. It would be a good vocation, it's got good money and prestige, and you'd really be helping people. But it's not actually congruent with me. It's not indigenous to this Jonathan character. So that's the whole thing, is to actually let yourself fall back into soul and allow a image or a fragment of poetry or an energetic knowing, a theophany, a vision of what your calling is. And then, of course, to really refine your understanding of it and then get it out there into the world.
Wow, man, that was very beautifully put. There's so much to kind of dive into with that. So the thing that when you're talking about what it made me think about today, I was working with somebody, I was talking about a vocation, and it could also be like right livelihood, and just defining what a vocation is. It's like, it's almost like a soul calling. It's like, it's not just a job. It's like, this is who you are. And who said that quote? The first one is a very excellent quote. I wanted to write that down.
Frederick Buechner, find your place where your deepest gladness and the world's hunger meets.
Yeah, that's such a fantastic quote, because really that's how you get into the vocation. You're inspired to do it, like you were sharing about your sister. It's different and it's great and you can value it, but it might not be yours. You're going to know what your impulse is. And you also shared something that was important as well, was like the step by step. Is you're going to get this little impulse from your soul or your gut or your spirit, and do you act on it? And what I've kind of found is that when I ask people, like, you know, what would you do with your one extraordinary life? Like, what would you do if you had $1 million a day for the rest of your life? They don't know. They're not asking any of that question. They've kind of shut it down 100%. It's become 100% survival, and none of the like inspiration, because it's not practical, or they can't see a way of doing it. So they kind of snuff it out. But really, it's actually required to listen to that voice. The more you listen to your soul, your spirit, your gut, however you want to phrase it, life is going to unfold naturally. But that's how you're going to line yourself up with the experiences, with the people, with the knowledge, to then uncover it. And I think if you are following your soul's mission, it's going to change over time. It's going to adapt. Like your life, I'm sure, has gone from one step to the next, and things have unfolded with new experiences. So the question that I wanted to ask, and I know you have a good answer for it, is people are listening to this and they're like, you know, man, I got kids, I got bills to pay, I ain't got time for this. I want to have my life's purpose going on, but you know, I got to get the electrical bill, and my daughter's always wanting a new bicycle or something. How do I figure that out and then move towards my purpose?
Yeah. Okay, so I got a bunch of things to say to that. The first thing is, someone says that.
Warm it up.
There we go. The first thing I want to say, if someone says that, if I'm in a kind mood, I would say, yeah, and I get you. You have so much on your plate that to add the inquiry, what is my soul's purpose, feels, overwhelming and undoable. If I was in a less kind mood, I would say, with fierce love, wake the hell up. Your life is going through your hands like slish. You're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. What is it that you're waiting for? I mean, if you literally are not surviving, you can't just have basic food and basic shelter. Okay, got it. But to everybody else, you aren't here just to survive and then have a few, wonderful toys. If that's all you desire, then I'll shut up. But if you do, in fact, recognize a craving, a ache in your being to live from your wholeness, your fullness, and make an impact, what are you delaying for? Not okay. So I partly just want to smack the person and say, wake up, It's a precious, precious life. A friend of mine just had a stroke 2 weeks ago. Boom, his career is over. I'm like, oh my God, So we need to take care of the basics first. But if you use Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we need a measure of safety and security, right? So I wouldn't do this teaching work on the Titanic. I wouldn't do it in a Syrian war zone. You need a certain level of safety and security. But I do this work in San Quentin Prison because it's not a war zone. It's a dangerous place to a degree, but that's taken care of. And then the next level up is belonging and esteem needs. You need to have a few friends in life. You need to have a few people who've got your back. But let's say that you have that. You've got some friends, not like tons, but you got some peeps. We also want to be esteemed. We need to esteem ourselves, that we're a decent enough person, and receive some esteem from others. The thing is with those four things, you can take those to extremes. There's never, you can build a bunker in your backyard, right? Pile up moats of money so you feel like you always have enough to take care of you. But it's, I hear there's some billionaires who are building a floating town in the ocean, so that when everything goes to shit, they can escape there. But of course, that's not going to work forever either. If there's been some sort of Holocaust or meltdown, that won't be sustainable either. But what Maslow, this great psychologist, said is that once you have adequate, not perfect, when you have adequately enough food and safety, esteem, and belonging, and I would say 90% of the people who are listening to this, that's the case, although we crave much more, then he calls it self-actualization and self-transcendence. And so that's a legitimate human want. That's on the hierarchy of needs. It's actually something a human being needs to be a full human. And it's one of the things that separates us from other species, is that without self-reflective consciousness, my kittens are being themselves. They cannot choose to be anything else. But I could fake it. I could try to present a kind of facade or personality to you in the attempt to get more of my esteem needs met, right? So, I see you've got a ball cap, and I think, well, maybe he'll think I'm cool if I put a ball cap on, then I'll do that, or, whatever. We all manipulate each other because we want to look good. I hope that you like me, think I'm intelligent and a good guy. But that's not the most important thing, right? Like I should get out of your space and be myself and let the chips fall where they may. So this last piece on the pyramid is self-actualization and transcendence. And if we follow that, who am I and what am I to do? What is my place? And we can drop into soul. So there's two big baskets in soul work. So now that's the preamble. Now soul work. Two big baskets. One is resistance, and one is the actual soul encounter. So imagine an arrow, evolution's arrow, your arrow. And the arrow maker needs to design a really nice arrow tip. It's got to go through the air really well and be sharp enough to pierce the animal that it's going for, the target. So that's the soul encounter technology. But the back of the arrow is also important. The feathers, they need to be trimmed just right, or they'll affect the flight of evolution's arrow. And what can happen is if they weren't trimmed properly, they'll create evolutionary drag on you, and you'll never get to the destiny, which is your soul's purpose. And so what are some of these feathers, this drag on our desire? Well, fears, our concerns, our reservations. Were we to find our purpose, there are parts of us that have some like, whoa, I don't know about that. So this is called like a psychology of voices or subpersonalities, right? And what I simply mean by that is not like multiple personality disorder, but like this morning, I experience this every day, and many people have too. There's the bedhead of me, which is like, I got a nice mattress, it's warm. I like just lying in bed. I do. So one voice was like, let's just lie here. And then another voice was like, let's grab the day, carpe diem. Let's get into this. There's great, I have a good life. Let's step into it. So these two tugged a little bit, right? And, eventually I got out, and that voice became animated. So that's what I mean about having sub-personalities or different voices, right? There's a part of me that wants to eat a big chocolate donut, and then there's the part of me that wants to be in shape for these summer hikes I'm doing. So we feel this. Okay, so there's the part of us that wants meaning, purpose, and calling, and there's the part of us that's scared of it. And why is it scared? Well, one, it thinks, what if I don't have one? What if I'm the one person that the universe didn't give one? Because you don't know. Two, well, what if I have one and I don't like it? That by definition is impossible, but I understand that it comes up. Like, the ego thinks, well, what if I don't like my soul's purpose? Again, I've been doing this for years. It's never happened, but you can imagine it, because you have no freedom. I didn't choose to be a whole person midwife. It chose me, but it fits me like a hand in glove. It's like waking up to your your sexual orientation. I didn't choose to be straight. I didn't sit there and go, well, I could be gay, I could be bi, I could be straight. I mean, I realized those were some of the choices, but what it was a discovery, right? So everyone listening, you discovered your attraction. You saw that girl or you saw that boy and you're like, I'd like to kiss that person or have sex with them, and on and it goes. So it's a discovery level thing in sexuality. So too, and you don't regret it. I don't sit there going, oh, I wish I was bi, because then I wouldn't remove any people. My wife once said, as a man, do you feel jealous of women being able to give birth? And I said, no. And she said, no, I don't believe you. She said, you must be. It's the most miraculous thing, having a baby inside, and, And I was like, well, I don't think you understand something. Maybe there are some men who do. That's fine. I said, I'm a man. It's not my will to give birth. It's not in me. I appreciate and am in awe of a woman's body and what it can do, but it's not my destiny. And so I don't dream of doing that, which isn't really me. Okay, so more reservations and concerns. The ego kicks this one up. Will I be able to make a living at it? Will I be good at it? Will I fail at it? Of course these things come up. What's the cost of living one's purpose? If the cost were, being martyred like Jesus, or having to abandon my family like the Buddha did, that cost would be too high for me. Now, for those, wild men, the cost wasn't too high. But for 99.9999% of us, we're like, yeah, if I knew ahead of time that I was going to be nailed to a cross and killed, or I was going to have to hop the wall like the Buddha did and leave his wife, leave his kids, never come back, no. The answer is no. I have a soul level obligation to my son, and no death wish of any kind. So one needs to actually kind of create a win-win situation with the ego, where you let the ego know there's a limit to how much I'll sacrifice. If my child starts going wiggy and he's, getting out of control or whatever, I'm going to slow down, this school that I've created, Purpose Guides Institute, and attend more to him. It's another purpose of mine. So I could go on and on. There's a lot of fears and reservations. And that's the first thing I do, is I work with those, because they're the impediments. They're the roadblocks. Sometimes people say, well, if everyone has a purpose, why isn't just naturally discovered the way we discover our sexual interests? Like that, you don't need much help with that. Somewhere around, I don't know, grade 6 or something, you're like, that girl really, or guy is really attractive to me. Well, one, we don't live in a soul-centric culture. We don't live in a culture that even recognizes such a thing exists. In all likelihood, even if you had a really good family, that really good didn't necessarily include a father and mother who knew and embodied their soul-level purpose. They may have had and may be having a good life, but not that whole life, not that deep life that I'm speaking to. So we don't have models for it. And when you watch, a lot of famous people, they have a lot of success in a particular field, but in their day-to-day lives, they aren't necessarily feeling that soul satisfaction. So the lack of modeling is a problem. We live in a kind of a pathological adolescent society. We see it in movie stars. We see it in politicians who, they may be bright and charismatic and have, all sorts of powers or talents, but at a soul level, not so well developed. So, but it's a long tradition. It's in Sufism, it's in the ancient Greeks, it's in Judaism, it's in almost every tradition I've ever studied. Depth psychology, archetypal psychology. And when we clear the impediments, it's not hard at all. It's there. It's already there. It's a self-remembering. It's a self-surrender. When the voices that are endlessly screaming, I need more money, I need more esteem, I need more safety, can actually relax, then the soul encounter technologies themselves just are like a fast gateway to soul. And so I spend a good deal of time working on the resistances, right? Honoring them, not trying to run over them like a speed bump. I don't believe in that. Just grow up. No, just like, let's talk to that voice that's scared, because there are some consequences. If you awaken fully to your soul level purpose, you may find that some of the friends and some of the occupations you do are no longer interesting. It's not that they're bad or wrong. I mean, unless, you were a mafia hitman or something, but it's not that what you were doing or who you were hanging out with was subpar or wrong. It's that you ended up outgrowing it. You've moved on. And that's okay. It's okay to let friendships go when their time is over. We don't have to hold on to a particular version of our personality, a particular version of our pastimes and the social groups we hang with. We can let them naturally evolve. And that can be scary for people. But the upside is that you then end up naturally magnetizing people at your new and higher octave. I just said a lot. I think I'll just pause for a moment.
Yeah, man. Well, once again, there's so much there and so much practical information. And you said a few things I didn't expect. When you talked about the fears, I never thought about the fear of just like the way that you're phrasing it of like, maybe I won't like it. Maybe I won't want to do it. It's like a calling, like a job or something. I think about the military as just something. It's like, yeah, you're going to go in here and then all of a sudden you're going to do this task. It's like, oh no, that's not the one I wanted. I wanted to be like this thing over here. And I think that you're correct from my perspective and working with people in a similar way. You've done a lot more of it. And just for myself as well is like, I feel like I am in my vocation. I am in my calling, doing the podcast and writing the book and things I'm doing. And I'm trying to grow that more, and it's unfolding naturally, but it's like a part of who I am. And I think that, the way that you phrase it is really good, because it is naturally you. It's going to be the thing that you are made for and built for, and you're going to connect for it in that way, and you're going to know it. You're not going to be questioning. It's like, this is it, and I know it, and it fits, and I love it, and I'm excited. And so you brought up a lot of those fears and resistances that I actually didn't expect. So I think that's really great comments. What I want to ask is you've shared about it a little bit, and I think it's the natural progression is soul encounter technologies sounds super boss. Well, I also wanted to ask too, like, I want you to touch on that for sure and explain in depth as you've been doing, which has been great. But like, what about someone who's kind of like, we talk about awakening or ego and people are, how do we like start that process of awakening, like the actual awakening and stepping out of ego? People are hearing this and they might not know their shadows or whatever. Like, what's a process to kind of step out of that level and to begin to become authentic? I think that's a really important piece to finding your purpose, is to be authentic with yourself and be authentic with others. When you show up to work, you're authentically you. When a lot of people show up to work, they're not authentically themselves. They're kind of like manipulating it. And then they're not even honest to themselves to begin with. So, and that has to do with like ego work and stuff like that. So maybe you can speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing to say is this takes courage. So I don't want to for a moment indicate otherwise. I mean, there's something called homeostasis, right? Our body is what, 99.6, 97.6, I don't know, whatever the main thing is. And our body regulates our temperature. If we start, getting a little too much cooler than that, we start shivering to create warmth. And if our body elevates, above that, we sweat. We don't want to run fevers. Well, everyone listening has achieved a certain level of stability, right? And some more stable than others, but you're presumably, if you're listening to a podcast, you're not starving to death and you're not being shot at. I mean, if you are, go protect yourself. So there's a kind of stability we have. We've got our friends, we've got our things, and it works okay. But that goes against this, like, but I want more. I want more depth. I want more meaning. I want calling. I want destiny. So it takes courage to mess with homeostasis, to mess with the status quo of our lives. Like I'm pretty happy, to be honest. I really like my life, and I'm happy more than I'm not. But let's say today I get a call from Soul that it's time for another upgrade, another transformation. You'd think I'd be completely excited, but each octave you go up, it's the same thing again. It's like, wait a minute, I kind of got used to this, like, I've got my purpose school and my meditation teaching, my psychotherapist, and my wife and kid are thriving. Like, I don't want to shake that up. So I get it. It would take courage for me to go, all right, and to make that descent yet again, right? And see what Soul is asking. So that's the first thing, is courage. No transformation. You know this as a transformational teacher. No transformation is possible without courage. The second thing I'd say, simple thing, is lie less. I'm not saying stop lying completely, because it's come to my attention that we lie a lot, mostly to ourselves. But start by lying a little less, lying less to others, lying less to ourselves, or at the very least, when you are lying, recognize it as such. And also, don't go into a shame spiral. There's a reason why we lie. We're trying to protect ourselves or enhance ourselves so we can get esteem needs met. So I notice, I'll tell a story sometimes, and I'll notice I just exaggerated it by 10%. There was no reason on earth for me to do that. It was a fine story. In fact, they might have been like adequately impressed with the story had I not just given it 10% more pizzazz. Now, look, I'm not going to go to hell for it. It's not the worst thing to embellish a little, but why am I doing that? So at least I can admit it to myself. And then maybe I can have the courage to actually just speak what I know to be true. That's like one of the most powerful things. And we find in every psychology and every spiritual practice is the truth will set you free. So stop lying, lie less, admit to yourself when you are lying. And one of the extensions of that is being authentic. As you said, that is the result of not lying, right? So this is me. This is the same me, more or less, that I am with everybody. And if I sort of started to create an artifice, a da 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 da, there's a bit of lie there. Now, look, I think there's some room for, when I watch whatever, podcast or this or that, there's room for some theatrics and for some, there's a theater to it. And that's not necessarily a lie. But when we're with our friends and family and with ourselves, wait a minute, why? What are we doing? So that's a supercharged practice for spiritual transformation, because what's left when you're not lying is the truth. And it feels so good. It's scary at first to be really authentic, but it feels so good because you are resting in what is indigenously you. You can't be someone else. I really admire my teachers. I admire Carl Jung. I admire James Hillman. I am not them. Number one, they're geniuses. I love people with big IQs. I'm not a genius. What else? They were insanely creative, like over the top. They were the Picassos and Da Vinci's of their fields. Fantastic. It's not to say that I'm not creative or that I'm not bright, but like, it's not about being somebody else. So I don't need to pretend to be smarter or more creative or nicer. I've met people who, I'm thinking of this one friend of mine. She's like literally the nicest person I've met. Like it's so deep, and she's got like a steel in her too. It's not like some wishy-washy thing. And I just like, wow. But it's not that I'm not nice. I'm pretty nice, but I'm not like the gold medal of it. It's just like some people have that. So you be yourself. If you have a little more edge, then you're that. So yeah, authenticity. I can never get sick of talking about that. Never. So yeah, your question. Courage, stop lying, let authenticity shine, take the hits, whatever they are. Not, if I'm authentic, my wife might not like it. I know what she wants me to say. That's pretty clear. And my son, my son was begging for the bigger ice cream cone yesterday because his friends were getting it. And I just decided, no, he's been having a lot of ice cream and sugar. And I stayed behind it, and was I right or wrong? Who knows? But it was the choice I made. And I thought it was the right thing. And I stood for it. He was displeased and he let me know. So, be authentic and realize that you're not always going to win approval from people. And that's a hard one because a lot of our actions are really trying to get others to approve of us and respect us. But I think in the end, people will respect us more when they can see how dependably authentic we are to ourselves. That's a special thing to have in life.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that, and I really like the way that you kind of phrased everything in a different way than I would put it and really articulate. So, with that being said, if we can start to be authentic with ourselves, if we can start to listen to those impulses, also with being authentic, when you're in conversations and people give you feedback you don't like, being able to own that, being able to look at it, being able to look at, they talk about shadow or whatever, just being open to feedback and even requesting it, even if it hurts, you're going to learn more about yourself. And if you're being yourself and the people around you don't like that, you probably should be around different people. You can find people when you're your authentic self who support that and encourage that. That's a much more fulfilling environment to be in. So if we begin to do these things and connect with ourselves, the next step would be looking at some of these soul encounter technologies. That's what I was wondering if you could start to talk about.
Yeah. Just before I do, just what you said, it was so beautiful. It's like find people who like you just the way you are, right? There's a joke I like saying, which is, my friends are those people who really know me and like me anyway.
Yeah, it makes sense, right?
Because I have all these personality warts, as do you, as does everybody. We've got our annoying whatever stuff and weird things. That's to be expected. And what I tell my son is, find, he's only 10, but we've talked about it once or twice, like marriage. And I'm like, find someone who likes you actually the way you are, because if you don't, they're going to work at fixing you. And that's going to be really hard for them. They'll probably fail it and be frustrated. You won't enjoy it. So find people who really like the way you are. But the only way you can do that is to present the authentic you. And then those who are not into you can say, I pass. You're too X, you're too Y, you're too Z, which is fine, which is really fine. I really believe that.
Yeah, I think too, when you're doing that, you're spending a lot less energy and you're going to be a lot less worried and a lot less anxious, because if you're kind of going to these environments where you're shifting your personality in these different ways, you're going to be a little bit more anxious. And I think you're going to be less authentic with yourself. It's just too tiring, just be yourself and let the chips fall as they are. Like you said before, it's just it's easier that way. You're going to find your people, then you're going to know yourself better. And that matters. You know what I mean? You're going to find, the people and the relationships and the experiences that matter to you. You could be pretending to like art when you actually love, I don't know, monster trucks, and then you can just go love monster trucks and you're just going to get yourself nice and lined up by just being who you are. Or maybe you have friends that are cool where you go monster trucks on your own and then you go do something with them. That's possible too, but just stay congruent with who you are and have the courage to be that way.
Yeah. It's exhausting to be inauthentic. If people wonder why they feel sort of dissipated and tired, it's not at a soul level. I mean, it can exhibit itself physically too, and just deep tiredness and sleepiness. But even if you're feeling vaguely vital in energy, you feel at some soul level like dissipated. Like, God, I'm exhausted. Well, it would be exhausting. I mean, if if Tom Cruise just played a role and then went home as the same guy and then just did this over and over again, it's just exhausting. So there's a character that we build, and if it's inauthentic, it's Robert Bly called it the long black bag we drag behind us. We want to release that. I want you to be you. If we meet again, after this podcast. I want to know the real you. I don't promise to like all of it, and I don't think you'll like all of me. Of course. But I'm interested in like real. So yeah. All right, so soul encounter. All right, so now we're getting into some sort of mystical depths, and some people will sort of be like, whoa. So, warning, I warned you. So there's the material realm, and there's thought, and we feel mostly sort of safe in that realm. There's a whole nother world. In Sufism, they call it Alam al-Mithal, the interworld, the middle world. In shamanism, they call it the lower world because it's thought of as a descent. In Celtic religion, they call it the other world. And this is the realm of imagination with a capital I. Again, not fantasy like, oh, I'd like to have sex with that woman, or I want to win the lottery. That's fantasy generated by the mind. But there is something at a soul level that is imagination. We want to touch into that. So here's how I attempt to bring people to the threshold of that. One is wild nature. So I'm in a room. I think it's pretty safe. It's a regular room. It's comfortable. There's heat in this house. There's electricity. It's the bathroom, the whole thing. I can get very kind of comfortable in my life here. You go out into wild nature and like even go off. This is something people don't do. Even hikers, like go off the path, even just 100 feet. What you find is the terrain, suddenly our ankles are very weak, most of us. Maybe as an athlete, yours aren't, but most people's ankles, we're used to flat. The earth is not flat. And I don't mean like the flat earthers thing. I mean, just generally step
now
on the earth. Now we got
the sound bite. I'm going to clip that and put it out there, and you're just going to get a whole realm of people.
That's great. It's not flat. It's incredibly textured and nuanced, and it destabilizes. We have to walk slower. On a sidewalk, I can walk full speed. On a hiking trail, normally for almost full speed. But when I'm off trail, I have to slow down. And there's a corollary. There's a mirror image of that in our psyche. Suddenly, we're out of our comfort zone. We're with no more humans or human conveniences. Leave those things behind. Don't check your phone. Keep it if you want as an emergency device. And bring this question out into wild nature. What is my soul level purpose? What is my vocation? What is the vision of my life? What are my gifts, my giveaway? There's all sorts of questions I can talk about later, but the main one is like, what is my soul level purpose? You drop that into stillness and silence. This is why I find the meditation teacher part is helpful. The part of being a psychotherapist is helpful because I can work effectively in helping those voices quiet down, the resistance voices. The meditation teacher part helps because our minds are generally so noisy that if we ask a spiritual question like, who am I or what am I at the level of classical enlightenment, or what do I do at the level of soul, our minds start going, and our minds are amazing. They come up with some interesting things, but it's rarely the genuine article. So one is the context and setting, and that is to be out in wild nature. People who do entheogens, psychedelics, we know about this, right? Context and setting. You don't just do it like in a sterile room. You find a place that is inducive, that is conducive to the journey. So you're out in wild nature. You have the practices of how to quiet your mind. That's a really important one. And then there's this word, journey. You find yourself, if you're lucky, right? If this is up to the mystery, you can make yourself available like quarry, right? Like sometimes I've done this. It's worked once in a while. I'll put my hand out and some bird seed, and a bird will come to my hand and feed right out of it. But man, do I have to be still to the point of not thinking. It's really something. So that's possible. If I can do it, you can do it. Well, now you bring that same stillness, and your hand with the question is out. You're in wild nature, and you ask the question, not to think about it, but you ask it. You kind of put it out there to the mystery. And then comes the most important part, which is imaginal listening. Imaginal listening. Now, this is where it gets difficult to describe. I described it a little bit before. The answers, the communication, the dialogue between you and soul can come through images, come through symbols. Jung talked about this. Hillman talked about this. Everyone talks about this. And in some ways, an image is better than words because, they say a picture is worth 1,000. Like the picture of you doing your work in the world, being what you are indigenously at a soul level, has a kind of transmissive quality to it. When I saw that picture of whole person midwife in my mind's eye, in the imaginal realm, it just was like, it was intense. And it was the experience of recognizing myself. It's self-authenticating, which means when you see it, you know it. You're not like, well, maybe I'm a whole person or maybe not. I was just like, oh, okay. So being in wild nature is one. Another method I use is I do these guided meditations. They're on like an MP3 recording. And it brings people up to the moment of soul encounter. No guided meditation is a soul encounter. I want to be clear about that. But if the guided meditation does its job, you've relinquished some of those voices of resistance, your mind has become quiet, and you're at the threshold of an underworld or imaginal world journey. And then I keep speaking and then sort of guide people and asking the questions. And receiving the answers. And so about the questions, it's very important to have more than one question. You could make it 10, you could make it 100. I made it 8. I call it the purpose octagon. So I don't want to just know what my vocation is, right? Vocationally, I've said it many times, I'm a therapist and a meditation teacher and a purpose guide, but that's not my purpose. Those are ways and means by which my soul purpose expresses itself. And I may change vocations tomorrow or in 10 years or never. We'll see. But then there's the giveaway. And when Native Americans would go out and do the Vision Quest ceremony, they would bring something back. I don't know what the native word for it is, but it was translated as giveaway. The thing that you were meant to give away to the tribe to make it whole, to heal it, and to bring it, evolve it. So I borrowed the term giveaway to describe the unique transformational process that you and you alone are meant to do. It may look like others, but when you do it, it's unique, never seen before. And it's important to know the steps. It's one thing to know I'm a whole person midwife, but what's step 1? What's step 2? What's step 3? Well, instead of me trying to invent it or think it, I ask soul, and soul can answer. Here's an easy one that everyone can do today. You can do it. It's called active imagination or Jungian journaling, because Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, invented it. I call it soul-centric journaling. So pen and paper or keyboard, and you'll write it like a play. So my name is Jonathan, so I put J, I go, soul, will you speak to me? Then I write S, and then I stop. And I wait. Let's say nothing happens. J, soul, did you hear me? I am requesting an audience. If nothing happens, then you walk away. That meditation didn't work today. Soul isn't a 24 concierge. It's not going to just appear on command. It will sometimes be shy. And this is one of the reasons why ultimately soul isn't shy, but it is shy when it feels, this is my understanding, soul is shy when we're not creating a place in a container where it feels it's going to be taken seriously and really honored. So, if I were Genghis Khan, and I just completed a day of rape, pillage, and plunder, and then did this exercise, my guess would be nothing would happen. So it would be like, the last thing I want to do is give you, Genghis Khan, any more information, any more spiritual potency, because you're making a pretty big mess, even just at the level of ego. So yeah, we go back and forth in this dialogue. So let's say soul says, I'm here. And then you say, can I ask some questions about my purpose? And let's say soul says, yes. Then you ask. And I have these 8 questions. What is the vision of my purpose? Like, how would my people and humanity in general potentially evolve and transform were I to successfully do what I'm meant to do? What are my soul core powers, my talents? What are my soul core values? What is my task, my next mission in life? So like at that level, creating this school 17 years ago is a task. I may feel complete with it in 10 more years and give the school away. Who knows, right? There are different tasks. I'm writing a book. That's a task, right? And when then you're done, you move on to the next one. So there can be many tasks for a particular purpose in life. What is my message? If I only had 30 seconds, on primetime TV to talk to everyone in the world, what would I really want to say at a soul level? And then the last is the one that everyone's really interested in, is the delivery vehicle. What's the means by which I am to give my my gifts to the world? So I use the image of like a pizza, delivery. The nourishment is the pizza, but the vehicle could be a bicycle, it could be a car, it could be a Humvee. You could, drive a tank to deliver the pizza. These are delivery vehicles. It's not the same as the purpose. Being a meditation teacher isn't my purpose. It's one of the ways in which I love the world. It's one of the ways I attempt to be a demonstration of love in the world. So yeah, the Jungian journaling, aka soul-centric journaling, is something everyone can do. One of the big difficulties with it is that it seems so easy that when you complete it, the mind comes in and says, well, I don't really know if that came from soul in the imaginal realm. I think I just made all this shit up, and that's possible. That is actually possible. There's a whole sheet I have for my students, like ways to detect when it's ego coming in and masquerading as soul, and when it's more likely to be an authentic transmission.
Man, again, that is such practical, epic information. I've actually, I'm glad you shared about the purpose octagon, because those questions are fantastic. And I think that the quality of question that you ask is going to be, the quality of answer you're going to get to be able to direct your life or whatever the information you're going to get. So really great stuff. And what it made me think about was, I heard about a technique a long time ago. I studied like the subconscious and having it come up in all these different ways. I read a book on left-hand writing. So it'd be the same thing, ask those questions and or if you're left-handed, write your other hand and just use your non-dominant hand. And even though you're thinking of it and you're writing it down, once you read it back, the answers are different than you would just write it as full, your just regular hand, because you're just operating in that level of consciousness. Like you're operating in, again, just like mind and ego, and it can only operate so much. It can only operate so much information. But when we go into the subconscious levels, then we're getting to different layers of information, just like in the guided meditation, in the Jungian journaling. And then the other one that I wanted to offer to people, I don't know if you've heard about this technique, but it's called image streaming by Win Wenger. I don't know if I've read it years ago, but I've used it. And you ask yourself a question, and then just as your mind is a theater, just let everything go. Just keep letting it go. Don't try to think of anything. And then after, you review it. And these are just techniques to kind of get out of just your regular consciousness, get out of that regular brainwave state, your automatic responses, your automatic answers, and see if you can get anything deeper. And don't worry about if you hit the nail on the head right away, like, oh, this is it, and this is the one thing, and now I'm set. It's more like starting the process, starting the engine, starting to dig your foundation, and you're going to find these gold nuggets as you go along, and then you can piece them together. But the idea is to begin to put the work in, because then that's how you're going to start to get the results. You're going to start to refine your clarity. It might start a little bit vague, but I think that what's happening on a cultural scale for most people is they're putting in zero work. Kind of like I said at the beginning, we're just not putting any effort there. So you're definitely not going to get a result. You're going to get whatever default reality and those base needs are met, because that's the only amount of work you're putting in. So I think it's important just to begin exploring these. And you said it, you had really great quotes the whole time, but what will you do with your one magnificent, precious life? And if we think of it like that, like to honor your life, to have the courage to honor your life and know what you're capable of. I think people just sell themselves short. We're so, some people had rough upbringings and had crappy maybe families or people and put downs, and they live into that in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, when in reality is we are very powerful beings. We can influence our reality to a massive degree, and we have a huge opportunity to explore life and make it magnificent and enjoyable on our own terms. And I like what you said earlier when you said, I'm happy most of the time. I think a lot of the new age stuff, we're going a little bit too far with it now, like instant law of attraction, happiness all the time. I remember when I was interested in enlightenment too. That had me hooked. And forever, I thought I was going to be in this ascended consciousness, quote unquote, right? And now, more over time, my thought is it's more about responsibility. It's more about integrity. It's more about putting in the work and having the courage. It's like you said, that level up moment. It's like it. You know it because you're you and you can feel it. And you're like, oh my goodness, that's terrifying, right? But do you have the courage to do it? And then again, you open up to another level. So just really beautiful information. Do you want to comment on any of that? I've just been really enjoying this. I don't know how to phrase it. It's just so well articulated and so practical that I think that people can really understand this and make really great ground if they're willing to do some of these things. Take the next step, try one of them, do any action towards it. And then maybe try one action a day for a week and see what that consistency does. And you're going to, through this, I know, refine and basically uncover bit by bit a little bit more of what your soul purpose is.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. I resonate with everything you say. There's like 100 lines I could follow. I'll follow this one at the beginning. I think you were talking about, the sort of the patience and coming back. We were talking about Jungian journaling. So I got this image of, a painter, not even a great painter necessarily. We're before the canvas. We decide we've got paints and we're going to paint. And you could just sit there like looking at it blankly and just get terrified and have nothing happen. So as the painting guide, it sounds like what we're saying is begin, just begin. Put some brush strokes out there. Your first painting may not be perfect. So I get this image of like, not only is imagination and soul an organ of perception, it's so atrophied that it's basically numb. Like imagine if I had an invisible third arm and it's there, but I've never exercised it. So it's just completely, nearly disappeared. So it can take a little time. Like if you want to run a marathon and you're out of shape, try like half a mile, the first day. Don't try to run 10. And so with the imaginal work, like Jung was a genius. He knew what he was talking about. Trust this fellow. He's really quite trustable. Don't do it just once or twice. Try it 10 times and you'll get more comfortable. Ego will become more and more relaxed and go into imposter mode less and less. And you'll find that this works. You can type this into Google, right? And discover how to do it. You can come to my school and get guidance and support, but just ask soul, like begin the dialogue. And don't think just because you're on a subway car and you say, hey, do you want to talk? And someone says no, that means forever. It doesn't mean forever. Soul wants you to be persistent. Soul wants you to court it. But it's not necessarily going to rain, gold coins of soul nuggets on you in the first seconds. And in this society where we think, or we're sold anyway, quick money, quick enlightenment, quick everything. Were it so, that'd be great. I would sell it because I'd become very rich and I would make big impact. But the truth is, I don't know of ways that are quick. I find that the path of mastery, whether it's in music or skiing or meditation, is practice, is showing up. And if someone, has a quicker method, that's great. I haven't been exposed to it yet. But the long, slow, slogging method works. It works. My friends who are the best skiers really practice. I love the word practice. The best martial artists, you're a martial artist. The best martial artists are, I got to teach with this guy. His name is George Leonard. He was one of the founders of the human potential movement. He coined the term human potential movement. He was there at Esalen and all that. He was a World War II bomber ace, Top Gun, and he would teach all the Top Guns. And at the end of his life, he let me teach with him. And he wrote a book called Mastery. And in his 40s, mid to late 40s, which is potentially a little late to start Aikido, he started, you can get injuries. And anyway, he reached to, I believe, the 5th degree black belt. And people are like, how? Why? How's that, And then he goes, because I love practice. I'm devoted to practice and the improvements take care of themselves. And I was just like, damn, that's great. So I recommend this book, Mastery by George Leonard. He's gone now. So it's the same thing with soul. It's not a quick date that you get the goodies from soul and then you run with it. You are soul. In the end, what is revealed is that you're not courting something outside of you. You are inside of it. You are inside of it. So it's like the picture of a tesseract. For those who don't know, it's a hypercube. It's a 8-dimensional cube. You can just Google it and you can see a picture. So just imagine a cube within a cube. Well, our regular life, let's pretend it's a 3-dimensional. It's 4 because it's got time. But, if all of our life is represented by a cube, consider the possibility that surrounding that is a hypercube. Right? So if you just said our life was a square and then said, but there's a whole cube beneath, above, behind, beside it, you can go, oh, there's so much more. So I think life is actually like a tesseract. There is way more than conventional mind and ego and science can see. And through meditation, through soul awakening, it's real. I've seen it. It's there. But it's not like some other world. It's right here, right now. And this is just the avatar, the representation, the extension, the modulation of your immensity. And that's why we always feel a little, what's the word? Not confused, but around being embodied. What's that word? Ambivalent. Because we're like, I feel like I'm my body and I want to preserve it and I don't want to die. But there's also an intuition that's like, probably more than that. I might be more than just a body. There might be more. Because we know even from science that we are in a miraculous world. It went from apparently nothing to something. First Big Bang. It blows my mind. I don't get that. How does something come from nothing? Second Big Bang, from something that's material to life. How does a rock or a something suddenly become a single-celled paramecium? Beyond my pay grade. All right, third Big Bang. Life becomes self-aware and self-reflective. Are we under the impression that that's it? After 14.72 billion years, that evolution just stops, that this is it? I'm not under that impression. So, yeah. Well, I guess my kind of final message would be, there is so much more to you than you can possibly imagine. There's so much more of you, and it's beckoning you, and it's calling you to know it, to inhabit it, to embody it.
Wow, Jonathan, that was, again, wonderfully stated, beautifully put. When you're talking about, the imagination or the intuition being atrophied, it's so interesting because this is like your essence of who you are. And it's interesting how, however this has happened, whether it's culture, education, society, a mixture of that or both, that we're not taught this naturally in schools, where it's not encouraged. It's not normal information, because it's the most important thing. And what we've done is we've identified so much with that little bit of consciousness that we have, that's perceiving not very much, just a little bit at a time as we move through the day, and materialism in the outside world. And we're giving almost 100% of our focus to that. And what you're inviting and what we're sharing is that if you turn the lens back, you just forgot to turn it back. It's all there. Your consciousness, I think it's only 5 to 7 bits of information it can hold. Your subconscious, when we're talking about the whole, or your soul, that's your subconscious. It's stored everywhere for every single thing you've ever experienced. It's also getting information from places you can't even understand, but you're getting it, and it's giving it to you in that subtle impulse and that feeling that you can feel. And you have to begin to practice it and use it. Just like you said, it's going to take a little bit of time. If you haven't gone to the gym in 3 years, I missed the gym for 3 months, and I went back, and I can barely walk. I'm sitting here. So I've been fidgeting so much because my legs are killing me. My butt is sore, and it's the hardest one to go back to if you haven't done the same thing. And I've been active. So you got to learn it. Flip the lens around and start looking into the depths of who you are. And the thing is, there's so much information there, but it's in silence and darkness, and it's going to pop up through feelings, through images, through different ways. But you have to start looking, you have to start exploring, and then just be okay with that filtering process. It's like you're digging a hole, and just enjoy the process of digging. Every now and then you'll hit something, and you'll get a piece of information, and that's going to help you uncover more about who you are. Because I don't even know how you put it at the end, but you put it just incredibly, so well put. So you want to comment on that, and just thank you so much for coming on the show and everything you shared. Is there anything else that you wish that I had asked you or you wanted to cover before we close it out? Because man, this has been a treat.
Oh, I've really enjoyed this. It's really fun talking with you. It's been great. Just your metaphor. It's like dig, right? If you're standing by the river of meaning, destiny, calling, and purpose, you're standing by the river of purpose, and you want to, and there's gold nuggets of purpose under the ground. Start digging. If you're happy with the amount of meaning and purpose you have, that is totally okay. I'm not suggesting to anybody that you need more. I'm asking, do you feel called to more? If you feel called, then do the Jungian journaling, do the digging, expect some burn like you got, from your exercise. Come study with us at Purpose Guides Institute. So, if you hear that calling, be faithful. A fidelity to the truth, a fidelity to the calling. And it's inevitable. You're flowering at a soul and purpose level is inevitable if you are faithful.
Amazing. Awesome. Yeah, I 100% agree. And I like the way you put that too. It's inevitable. If you do the work, it will be inevitable. And it's a beautiful experience, and it's your life. You're the only one who can try. You're the only one, if you feel uninspired, if you feel super aligned, you're probably on the other side, be like, yes, it's worth it. And if you don't feel too, aligned right now, these are the things that you can do to kind of, move in a direction that's going to fulfill you, that you're going to just understand yourself better, your life better, and make it meaningful on your own terms. And it's the most important work you could do to give your existence the best shot you can. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your wisdom and your work in your institute. Where can people find more information on you and your work if they want to dive deeper?
Sure. Before that, I just want to double down on what you said, is that this work isn't an act of selfishness for our own joy alone. It is really your best shot at being a demonstration of love, of being an activist in the broad sense of the term, right? Living purposefully is an act of love, an act of activism. So that's the beautiful thing about this. We need more people to wake up to their soul level purpose, because humans who are living on the default purpose program are messing things up. And there's part of us that does that. I'm not saying it's them over there, right? But to the extent that I am awake to my purpose, I mess things up less. So yeah, if people are interested in my work, go to Purpose Guides, that's plural, .org. And we have courses for people who want to go through this 12-module process. We have courses for people who want to learn the guiding skills that I've been doing with people for a long time, and some other fun free things. So check it out at purposeguides.org.
Amazing, man. Well, I want to triple down on what you said because it's such a great comment. But in a world where there is so much, seemingly wrong, quote unquote, the best thing that you can do is get into that state where you're fulfilled, you have energy, you have joy, and you're showing the example to your friends, to your family, to everyone you encounter by being the best version, the most authentic version. And by that, you're helping so many people. They talk about mirror neurons now. And so if everybody in the world were depressed and you were happy, you would be showing that example. If everyone in the world were out of shape and you were just in shape, that would be teaching. And it's the best way to teach, the best way to interact, the best way to inspire is to be that example. And so, have the courage to do the work. So do you want to add anything else? I just thought it was such a great ending point.
That was perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you. I appreciate your work. I invite people to check out your website and your programs. I know that they're amazing just from what we've covered here. So much work with people in the way that you're able to share everything in such a understandable way with great analogies shows a high level of mastery. So thank you for your work. And I appreciate you coming on. All right, guys. See you later.